All right, everybody. Hey, yep, you're getting 2 videos today on the YouTube. It always happens that way, right? Okay. Um, anyway, also another reason why I've been really busy is I'm going back. Um, I'm always taking something educational, whether it's in health, mostly around health, every year. So I'm constantly getting CEUs and all these other things, though I don't really care if it's certified. I don't really care if I get that. It's just I have a whole box of certifications and education, and there's just only, let's just say, you get bored after a while. And I think other people get bored of you posting all of your certifications and your degrees. So I don't do any of that. And I'm not the best at following the rules. I've got my own set of rules, and so I'm going back, and over the next, I don't know, through January, and I'm taking some new CEUs on some other osteopathic work, more of the non-invasive type stuff. Very exciting stuff. Really goes well with what I already know. And I haven't really upgraded any of my osteopathic stuff since, I don't know, 25 years. It was kind of the focus when I first started 30 years ago. So that and energetic healing, and then I've bridged out. So that's kind of like where I've been. I've had a lot of stuff to do, and putting together a new treatment, with stuff I do, and adding some of this in there. And then I also want to get a few clinical hours working on people. So that's kind of like what I'm focusing in on. Been focusing in on some legal stuff too, work, just my own personal paperwork type stuff. And so this video, I just kind of wanted to talk about, in the media yesterday, there was a press release, and this is not good, it's not bad. This is like just information and something to think about, right? And they were using a word called convalescent plasma. Okay. And I don't know why I'm always talking about blood, ritualistic blood, sacrificial blood, communion blood, just I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing, I guess, but it always seems to come up. So yeah. So I kind of want to talk, just kind of, blood is a huge amount of water. And we know by looking at Dr. Emoto, his work, that water is very imprintable. And a lot of the work I've done with Rudolf Steiner's information about the mineral kingdoms, they're very mirroristic as well. I forget what the word, that reflective, like a mirror. They have mirror consciousness. And so what does that mean? They take the imprint of the things outside of themselves, and then they project them back out. And in the projective way that they're projecting it back out. So we know that water has that ability too, because Steiner's talked about it. A lot of Victor Schellenberger's work around water. I've even seen amazing private working farms where it started with water and vortexing the water and what it does for the crops, and so that's like a whole other thing. So I've been kind of involved in a lot of this water information for a long time, and it deals with the blood. And then also there's a lot of minerals, right, in the blood as well. So they're also with the water, the reflecting, mirroring, different types of consciousness. And our consciousness, what we think about, what we feel about, also those that were our genetic families and relatives. And also we're, dealing with the world around us. So recently, bones have kind of been, well, I mean, this is not information medically really that ends up in the US. because, we're dinosaurs, we're medicine dinosaurs, which needs to go extinct. But there's some information that during my class was discussed, and that bones are being seen sort of glandularly, right? Part of the endocrine system. The hormone that they're producing is called osteocalcin, and they produce, and a lot of my work is the structure, and the intricate little pieces of the structure, right? And how the structure operates with all the other systems, especially the brain. And anyway, when people get under super high stress, or they're afraid or in fear, whether it's real or perceived, the bones will start to release this osteocalcin hormone. So, take this, think about, just put these pieces together. So, okay, so I want to talk about, because I try to put this together in a story so that maybe it's more graspable. So, back in, I think 95, in 93, yeah, I guess it's that far back. Oh, no. I worked on getting a associate's degree in theology. And back then they didn't have computers or anything. You did everything by the phone. You worked with your instructors one-on-one. They'd send you in the mail the materials, and then weekly you would talk to them, and they would, send you a test in the mail, and you'd send the test back, and essays, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I got my associate's degree in theology, and then I was ordained. And so I actually had to travel to Louisiana to a university down there, because it's a religious university. So part of one of their curriculums was theology. And so I went down there to visit a friend of mine in Mississippi, but I went to the ordainment after 2 years, and after I got my degree, and went down there, and I was sitting in the pews. It was a super, for a young person, the minister was phenomenal of the school, the dean and pastor. And he, really gave me insight into fitting and tooling any work or anything that I learn in a way that I get to live my life in the way that I want to live it, but then it also benefits people. And it doesn't have to be in a building. It doesn't have to be in a church. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be anywhere, and it can be anything. But the guy that was sitting next to me, so like we got there really early, and there were a lot of people got there really early. So we're just talking to the people who also went through different programs, through this university. And I met this guy and was sitting next to him. He was like 60. And we started talking about, a lot about health and stuff and memory. And he started talking about how he'd had 2 heart transplants, and that, they don't usually tell people who the transplant came from or any, of the personal information, at least back then. And he said the first heart he got, he was like, 60, white, probably, European kind of descent guy. And he said that he knew that the first heart he got was of a woman in her, like, late to late 20s, early 30s, and that, her diet was so predominant. And what happened is that diet that he craved, because that's really what she ate, was emotionally attached to when she was alive, he started eating, and it was not a diet that he ate. It had a lot of fried foods and, things of that nature, very kind of Southern. And he said that the heart didn't do well because of this diet, and he just couldn't stop himself. So they ended up giving him a second transplant, and he knew energetically that it was a late teenage boy, and they were pretty similar, but he could see the people. He met the people through actually having the transplant in his body, and he carried on a lot of their behaviors, right, and their feelings, and even into the diet and the food. So that's, imprintable memory coming from the outside into the inside. Okay. So convalescent plasma. So that's kind of the topic. Um, so another big thing, another big event, I've kind of made notes just to kind of pull this whole thing together. So first dark field hematology blood reader was in Northern California. He'd been a doctor for over 15 years, surrendered his licenses, and just did alternative medicine. And he was one of the best blood readers. In regular bull crap, Western medicine, you have to have all these tubes of blood and all this other stuff. In dark field hematology, they take one drop of blood and they put it in, and then you can see everything that's going on in the blood. And it's mirroring everything that's going on with you and the outside environment as well. And one of the things we had this really long conversation about when he read my blood was that you can see everything in somebody's blood. He said you can see whether they're depressed, because they have these different kinds of lesions, right? And some of them are pretty bizarre, like kind of shocking bizarre. But he said, people will have what he calls sad blood, and they'll actually be these little like faces, like little dot eyes with a, unhappy smiley in them, or sometimes just something like that. And just other, weird anomalies. You can tell when people's blood is happy, that they have a propensity for happiness. He can see psychotic behavior. He can see sociopathic behavior. So he could see like a lot of these other, not just physical, but also psychological imprinting on the blood. And he could tell like if it actually happened to us as an event, like say a bad event, a post-traumatic stress event, or if this is the imprinting that we took on. And you can also see like the genetic stuff. So once this behavior carries on, then with the next offspring, when we have it, then what does it become? It becomes hereditary, right? Becomes a hereditary imprint. Okay. All right. So anyway, I was lucky because I had, little smiley faces in my blood. So thank God, because it's been tough, really tough. I know people that have dealt with way less than I've dealt with, that, just off themselves, or, go hide under a rock and never come back. So I think that because I was gifted, somebody gifted me with the propensity to have happy blood and happy water, that it ultimately carries me through the other side. Okay, so talk about that. Okay. Okay, so recently too, I just want to throw this out really quick, is like, you can go in and you can look at a lot of Emoto's work. I'll leave some links of Emoto. There's also this documentary that I'll talk about in a minute, and I'll try to put the link underneath the video for that, because it was pretty horrific. And it kind of ties more of this together. So Emoto, he would, play music. He would speak words. He would write words. He would project feelings onto water, and then he would freeze it, And then he would look at the crystalline structure, dark field hematology microscope or dark field microscope, and he would look at the structures and the patterns. And there was a huge difference in, like, say, Beethoven or Mozart or Thank You or Joy or, whatever else. The crystalline structures, the geometrical patterning was very significant. So this is how when the water mirrors back the image, so the image that's projected is this from the outside world imprinting onto the water is thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and really heartfelt thank you to the vibration of the water. And then it's frozen, and then it has like a geometrical structure, crystal structure of that word thank you. So what it's doing is it's reflecting in a symbolic way, because this is how a lot of this world works, is in our left or right hemisphere would pick this up. It'd be a very symbolic language, symbology, and that's how it reflects it back to us. And it could also reflect back poison and hate and decay and death. So he showed that as well. And so my teacher, Babido, he passed in June 2016. And he was always talking to me about the blood in us. The reason why Native people talk, he was Native, was that because it's the blood, not so much the red color, but that's the way it's, symbolically seen, but the relations, that we're all related because everything is crystal, right? Everything is crystalline structure. Everything in it that is living has mineral kingdom in it, right? So we're constantly being imprinted onto, and we're constantly reflecting it out. Or if we get to know ourselves and our own mind and stuff, there might be a possibility that we choose the imprinting reflection that we're sending out, right, more consciously, and allowing whatever imprinting onto us from the outside world. But we can choose to be neutral and not be emotionally swayed back and forth, so that we're not taking in a lot of that environmental imprinting, unless it's good and feels good and it's happy and it's good. And so we talked about a lot about that, about the blood being the crystals, and that this is how we send and receive, right? But we could haphazardly just receive and mirror back nonsense or negativity. I hate that. I don't even want to go there. But what is above is below, kind of a thing. What is below is above. So haphazardly, without consciousness. But it could be good if you're doing it all consciously. Okay, so and this is where all relations, all my relations comes from, is that because we're all related, because we all have this crystalline structure that is in us, in our all water is mineral kingdom. It's a crystalline structure, and it actually is like a computer hard drive that you can actually imprint on really good things and really good information. And I mean, look, can you imagine like going and reading a book out loud to the river, like some really cool, like happy, like Anastasia books, and imprinting that information onto the water while it's going by? This is kind of like where a lot of this consciousness stuff, my consciousness stuff, leads me. Okay. Blood and water imprintable. So totally highly imprintable. Okay, so we're getting ready to come back to the convalescent plasma. That's the new cure. Released yesterday, I think, by the FDA. Okay. So we're going to start to ask the questions like, Do you want to receive somebody else's imprinted blood into you? Because even if they clean it, they reorganize it and take the plasma out, from what I've just explained to you, that you can't take the data or the information of whoever it was derived from back, right? You can't fix that. Which means that you're going to be taking in that data and information, just like, this person who had 2 different hearts, or, this doctor that was a blood reader, and what was in the blood and what he could see was in the blood, right? And also, these are lesions. So whatever lesions are actually shown in the blood are, open wounds, structural problems within that person's body. So now you're delivering information of lesions and wounds and whatever else into somebody else's body as a, viral therapy. And, sometimes they have to take a lot of blood in, and they put all the blood together. So there could be like 1,000 people, and then take the plasma from that. I mean, that is pretty horrific to me, and something that I am, for me personally, adamantly 100% against. Now, I'm not trying to imprint on you what your decisions in your life or what your belief systems are going to be. This is kind of like why I'm trying to actually talk to you about this in the best way that I can. There was a documentary I watched a couple months ago on these blood centers that are in super poverty areas where there's like no jobs. They prey on the homeless people, and they don't test them to make sure. A lot of them that would come out of the clinic would say, yeah, I'm on drugs, I'm on heroin, I'm on crack, but they, never really test us, and they take the blood anyway, right? Because they're compiling the blood into blood banks, plasmas, which they sell the plasma to other countries to give to other people as therapeutics for whatever people have, autoimmune system disease, blah, 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 blah. But even those people that are getting the blood at the high dollar plasma infusions don't even know where this blood's coming from. And in the documentary, it showed to people that it was pretty sketchy, like, yeah, like, hello, moral and ethical, boundary. And so these, homeless people were on drugs. They were homeless. They've been through hell and back. They were mistreated and abused, even by the clinics, because the clinics would allow them to come in and give more blood than, they should be giving for payment. And then they were turning around and selling this blood for huge amounts. And it was all completely, number one, 100% predatory. So what kind of plasma could that be? Because the imprint of the clinic collecting it is predatorial, and only cares about the dollar. That's got to imprint that water, that's the blood that's coming out, and it's imprinting on the people who are going in there who desperately need the money. And they're prisoners, basically. And so they're, having to voluntarily abuse themselves and be abused. And number three, I mean, what kind of blood is the person that's on drugs and shooting up heroin? And, what's happened to that person? What kind of lesions and information and data do they have in their blood that's multicultural, genetically, hereditary? I mean, because obviously they're not in a very good place. They're like in the worst place they could be in their life. So what is in the information and data of the blood and water that has delivered them to that spot, and then they're giving the blood and the water? Anyway, I'll try to find the link for that documentary. I might have to look because I don't remember the name of it. But, these are things to think about when, and it probably will. I know that there are a lot of, really good benefits for people who have things like severe autoimmune system disease, and they are getting some of this plasma, even if it's from, you know, the most negative places, because their disease is actually worse than the condition of the data and information from the person, the drug addict on the street, where it's originally getting from, and the hereditary, you know, aspects of that as well. So there could be benefits, but you know, what's the conscious choice here in medicine? So I'm not trying to be like proactive, I'm not trying to be negative, and it makes me kind of emotional because, you know, I had to think about this for a couple of days, like how would I talk to you about this? And how would you be able to grasp this? You know, how would you be able to look at it and go, wow, there's a whole bunch of information that's missing from this conversation, and how serious blood is. So for me personally, I would probably never take a transfusion. I don't want anything that belongs to somebody else in my body, including a vaccine, which has animal parts and fetal, you know, male DNA and a whole bunch of other crazy things in it. And it also has man-made metals that are in there. I don't want those man-made metals in there, right? So I'm, you know, probably not going to, even if I'm in the worst condition, take a convalescent plasma treatment for any reason. Even if they cleaned up the blood supply, even if they cleaned it all up. And this is the other thing too, is like, what do they want from your plasma? I mean, they can look at the DNA structure, you know, like there's this other thing too, like not trying to get conspiratorial, but being in medicine for 30 years, as long as I have, all aspects of it, has made me a huge conspiracy person. But it's also turned into facts, because I also know a lot of the facts. Like, I don't know everything, but I know quite a bit, and I know enough to know when something is dangerous for me and is unquestionably a no, right? No, 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 no. And all the stuff that's going on with the blood, and there's also like adrenochrome, and there's also taking blood from teenagers now, and you know, get wealthier buying it at top dollar to get infusions. How do we know that a lot of this, you know, plasma isn't going to be used for other purposes that, and obviously nothing is being disclosed, because all this stuff that I just talked to you about, the blood and the water, is not being disclosed to you, is it? Right? So anyway, you have to make the decision about yourself and your children and your animals and your environment and your home and where you live and your town, and your state, and then, you know, as a nation, and then, you know, globally. So make the right decisions, because a lot of this stuff in medicine, like mainstream medicine, you can't take back, right? Once it's done, you can't take it back. Once you've ingested something, or something's been put into the body, whether it's injection, blood, you know, whatever else, you can't take it back, okay? A lot of the medications these days actually bind with your DNA. So you try to get off them, you like get really sick and die. Medicine shouldn't be that way at all. It shouldn't control you like a prisoner, right? Okay, that's it. That's all I got for you. I'm going to try to find the Emoto link, and also if I can find that documentary. But thanks so much. Have a great day. Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project, and Bridget Lynn Dolgoff.